This does lead us quite nicely into our topic this
Yeah.
week, which is small screen superheroes, which has been inspired by a comment that Bruno Heller made at Edinburgh Television Festival, which has been making the rounds. Where he basically, the only thing he says that people are really starting to pull apart is the words, "I don't think superheroes work very well on TV." And he goes on to say, probably because of the costume thing. TV is about real people and faces, and not so much about magic and the supernatural things. This is the guy who show runs Gotham, which is a kind of superhero show where it's trying not to be.
Gotham. I have words about Gotham.
What do we make of just the quote itself? Because this has been the focus of it all. Are there parts of this that we agree with, or do we just disagree with it entirely? Like, what do we think?
I do, yeah. I mean, we all know Flash's and Arrow's costume are the best costumes in the world, or the Hawk's costumes. You know what I mean? Costumes are a big deal to superheroes, and obviously they get it right so much on the big screen. But sometimes the leather-clad suit. But the thing is, it works better in motion than stills.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know costumes because costumes are done right. Like Supergirl's costume looks great. I love Supergirl's costume. What else have we had? Quake's costume, Mockingbird's costume. They're pretty standard, but they still look pretty good. I mean, it's not Mockingbird from the comics, but in the context of the show,
Yeah,
it
that would
works.
never ever appear on a screen ever.
I would fucking love it if it did.
Outside of the difficulties with costume design, like budget effects in other ways, Alex, you were already talking about the reason you thought this new Warriors show would be animated. Translating these powers to screen is often quite difficult.
I don't even think it's down to that. I think that can be done. You can cover that up in many different ways. I think it comes down to more what we were talking about with Luke Cage, and going back a couple of stories there, and it's about the characters. If you think of think of any of the TV series that we watch or have watched. Think about the successful characters. They've got much more interpersonal relationships, and then think about the failures. So we've ranted a few times about Arrow. And I'm anxious that I don't want to go on a long-term rant about this again. But if we think about it, when they went to the Lazarus Pit, that was poorly received. When he decided, when they made the character Felicity Smoke less about her and more about her superpower set, that's when it started going downhill. If we think about the first season of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, it was very much Creature of the Week. And then later on, when they started focusing on the team itself and how they related together, it suddenly started doing a lot better. TV, you can't, in a 45-minute episode, you don't have enough time to suspend your disbelief and sit back and go, yeah, I'm happy to believe that all this is going on screen. And you need to have that thing that anchors it to reality, where you can relate to what's going on. And while Supergirl is pretty much the exception that proves the rule in this case, because she is an alien, she's also the majority of the season. Season 1 is based around her relationships with the people that she works with and her family, and it's incidental that she's a superhero. It's kind of how I explain Game of Thrones to people as well. A lot of people are against the idea of fantasy TV. They don't like dragons, they don't like magic. It's not about that. It's about medieval politics. It just so happens that there's some dragons rocking about. And that's pretty much what Supergirl and Flash do, really successfully. It's not about them being superheroes. That's incidental. They want to do good, but their relationships with the people around them is what makes them successful. Barry wouldn't have done anything he could have done if he didn't have the rest of his team with him. Same as Supergirl wouldn't have been able to do it without her team. And that's what makes it so special. Superman, on the other hand, in the films, he just rocks up, flies about, saves a few people, and off he goes again. Batman, very similar as well. He does have a team, but he's not superpowered either. It's money. He's his superpowers. But on a 2-3 hour film, you can sit back and you can melt into the story and forget the fact that this is completely unbelievable, and you don't need those relationships to make it
So do you
work.
think that's how it where it falls down for you is because you're dealing with a limited runtime?
I think so. I think if you're trying to get Monster of the Week episodes rarely work outside of maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes of any new show, and they are just to introduce characters. But if you're trying to get a beginning, middle, and end, and a hero's journey into one episode, it doesn't work. You can't do that in one episode of TV. So you need to spread it out across the whole season. But then in each episode, you need to have a start, middle, and end, and you can't do it in 45 minutes. You just don't have enough time.
There is the caveat to that. You can't have the beginning, middle, and end thing because there's that one amazing episode of Shield. It's still probably my favorite episode of Shield, where it's Simmons is just trapped on that planet.
Yeah,
That's
a whole.
But I get what you mean. Like, you can't generally have a whole character arc play out like a movie play out on TV. It just doesn't work. You can't translate that because then you end up with Gotham.
Could you have watched 11 episodes of Simmons being stuck on Mabeth?
No, true.
No, you couldn't. And I think that one was so good because it was.
How
it
do
was
we
against
resolve
what they've
this?
just done? They've just come through quite a stressful end of season with Daisy's mom. They've already dealt with Daisy's dad, and everything. It's a really intense end of season, and it just ends with Simmons going. And you come a couple of episodes into the next season, and then you think, oh, are they going to deal with this?
So,
And it's all very fraught, and then finally they just go into this complete pace change, change of everything, and you spend an episode with Simmons on her own.
So this challenge that we're talking about seems to be exclusive to like network television, where basically they want the audience to be able to tune in to a random episode and understand what's happening.
They want it to be procedural, whereas everyone
to be accessible
comics
enough.
need to be.
Whereas with an ongoing plot, you've got to you want long-term investment as well. Now this is changing. If you compare it to like the Flash type stuff, where they try and do that, then fair enough. These Monster of the Week episodes and blah blah blah, and these ongoing love stories where nothing ever seems to change. But the Netflix model has completely gotten rid of that challenge by just dumping every episode all at once, and people are more watching that in a binge rather than on a week-to-week basis. And even HBO, where they've obviously got more money to throw around, but you are not expected to go into the middle of Game of Thrones season 5 and get it.
Yeah, no,
you are. The onus is on you. Go and buy the last 4 box sets. Come back and catch up on season 5, and then you can properly understand what's going on. So whilst I think what this Bruno Heller might have been thinking in his mind is superheroes don't work very well in that sort of serialized weekly episode context.
It doesn't work as a procedural. It doesn't.
And
Which is
I
why
will agree
Constantine
with
died.
I will agree with some of that because of the reasons you've just cited. Is that it just makes everything throwaway. It doesn't make things longer term. But think about this for a sec. Do you think that comic books have more in common with novels, movies, or television?
Television.
Scott? It's not a test. Which do
I
you,
know.
which do you most compare
I'm
them
thinking
to?
because it's like I'd say movies.
Right. So, in my head, I would always say TV. Just comics they come out every single week. They're only 20 pages long, and you've got that much real estate to tell a story that serves a larger plot, but can be read on its own, in theory. It is a really hard tightrope to walk, but some people do it really well, and because it's serialised, sometimes you get the bombastic villain fights, and sometimes you just get 2 talking heads in a room.
Yeah.
And like TV, you get the bottle episodes occasionally, which can be the best episodes on fucking TV. And then others, you get like the big finales, and I do think that in an ideal world, TV would have enough budget and follow the Netflix model, and it'd be a better place to tell comic book stories. Whereas films are great for those. They're great for those big event type stories, like Civil War 2 is a comic book event, but it reads more like a blockbuster movie than a normal comic book.
I was thinking more volumes for film. Is where I was going. Like you could do a volume of a comic in rather than week in week out, which your point makes more sense as doing that. I was thinking on the volume side of things.
Yeah,
like
and
volume one.
yeah, you're right. Like it certainly does. I mean, in my head, I would have loved to have seen a 13-episode Captain America series that took place during the war, and then the big finale to that was Avengers 1 or whatever, where he's back in the future, and to get more time to explore those things, because we got all of World War II in a frigging montage where he rides around on a motorcycle and punches people occasionally, and it's like, well, that stuff's really interesting, and I would have loved to explore it more. But they haven't got the money to keep spending on these things. They probably haven't got the level of interest. But to me, as a format, I think it would work.
See, you say that, but if they had the Russo brothers from the start, I think we would have got that. Like, I just think that's down to this was early day Marvel trying to figure out if they did that first movie again now with the Russos with their vision in mind. I think we would have got that, right? Because the Russos understand TV and they understand pacing, and you could put that into a movie environment where you let it breathe. I think the beginning and ends would be still bookended like that, but I think the middle act would be where the Russos would do their whole playing off each other and having that the Howling Commandos being the central part of the middle. Like, I think that would have been. I would have think that would have been pretty cool. But that is just time accelerated, and like you said, a Netflix model and everything, and it would be cool. Maybe the new Captain America might do that.
To me, like, and Alex, you're more familiar with TV than I am, but the kind of proposition of TV shows is changing a lot now that Netflix has got as much money as they have, and they're really changing the landscape. And these syndicated, serialized TV shows are kind of becoming less and less, and they're more. You've seen a lot more of the limited series that really has a bit more money and fewer episodes, but they tell a more sort of tight story. And
unless you're X-Files.
I think networks are walking quite a tightrope at the moment, because if you look back to when ABC did their slashathon and killed everything back in May, they killed off so many series all at once that it's getting difficult to tell a long form serialized story. As a writer, you can't say I want to do a 3-season show. You can't do this. Every season needs to be standalone, and sometimes even every half a season, which is why we're seeing things being cut down to 2 stories in one season, because the producers, the showrunners, genuinely don't know if they're going to be coming back after Christmas.
Yeah.
And I think they've got so many problems with that at the moment that while the networks seem to be chopping everything, they don't realise that the carpet's being taken out from underneath them by the likes of Amazon and Netflix, who will be, in my personal opinion, in an ideal world, it'll just be a Netflix on-demand model in the future. I don't think it's close by any stretch, but that will be what happens. But it's money that makes the world go round.
Yeah.
But I think another thing to consider with the TV heroes standpoint is that in a cinema, you've got a controlled environment. You've got perfect sound, you've got perfect lighting, you've got a massive screen. You can draw your viewers right in. In theory, anywhere they sit in that room, they're going to be drawn into the story, and they can believe that guy up there, who used to look remarkably like the Human Torch, is suddenly Captain America.
Yeah.
And you can believe that. At home, I can be sitting watching S.H.I.E.L.D. in my room as it is, bright, and then a week later, I can be sat in complete darkness watching it with noise cancelling earphones on it. Two completely different things. And I think going back to the original point which raised all this is that there might not be a place on TV for capes and masks because you can't drag people into it. I've watched Arrow in so many different environments, and it gives you a different feeling every time you watch it. The first season, I watched it next to a swimming pool. I watched it on an aeroplane.
Yeah.
I watched it in a darkened room, and each one gave a different feeling. how are you supposed to believe that this guy is running around saving this bedraggled city when you're sat next to a swimming pool sipping cocktails or whatever?
I know what you mean. But those shows, I think, have a more disposable sort of tone because everything happens in a week. They are really kind of goofy. They know they are, but they are really fucking goofy. These CW shows, and that's fine. But
have you seen Gotham?
I would watch Flash on a laptop or an iPad and probably get as much out of it as I would from watching it on a TV in my house with the lights off and whatever. But there's certain shows when they're on in our house, like Game of Thrones new episode tonight. Right, we'll get dinner out of the way. We'll get the lights dimmed.
You have to wait till after 9 o'clock.
Everything's
sun's
done.
setting later.
Yeah. Everything out the way, phones down, Thronies is on now, surround sound, and then you sit and you enjoy it. But we don't do that for like the 30-minute comedy stuff that we watch all the time and seen over and over again. But when something really special is on TV, you change your environment and you kind of take it
Breaking Bad
seriously.
is another example. I mean, it's not common, but yeah.
Do you think that Game of Thrones would have done as well if it was on a standard network?
Nope.
I don't think it would have been possible to do
because
it.
Because it would have been 22 episodes a season, like, not given the time, forced romance where it was. It wouldn't be the adaptation.
I think a lot of what makes Game of Thrones successful is the money that's been thrown at it.
Yeah.
And I think it's that by throwing the money at it and fixing the scenery and the costume and all these things and the sets, you can overlook some of the other issues that are with it. It's effectively you've got a pot of points that you can allocate to a show, and after a certain threshold it becomes acceptable. And while it may be sitting underneath this threshold for everything else, the amount of points allocated to set dressing, costume and effects is sufficient to bring everything else back up again. And I think you've got things like ability to believe the storyline, interpersonal relationships, all these factors we've talked about already to do with TV, and everything just gets thrown into one. Now, whereas Game of Thrones are still telling roughly the same story that they've told in the books, I think if that was on a network, it wouldn't have done anywhere nearly as well because they've just not got the money to throw at it, and it would have been cancelled after season 1. Whereas you look at the likes of Flash, and Flash has dealt with that issue rather than throwing effects money at it. They've beefed up the writing and made the interpersonal relationships between the team work a lot better. So
which is why that end of season 2 works so fucking well.
Yeah, you need to offset the failings of the show, and I do agree with the original quote in that TV is not the best place for it, because in an ideal world you wouldn't have to artificially beef up these things such as set dressing, costume, or create interpersonal relationships. I know that's a big bugbear of yours, having to force relationships, will they, won't they? But they're forced
to force a death.
Yeah, you have to force these things into it to get people to buy into the series, which they wouldn't buy into otherwise, because it's on a small screen and in short form serialized drama, which doesn't really work. So, at the end of the day, take Mockingbird.
Yes.
Like Scott said, you got Mockingbird. If you got Mockingbird in her comic book outfit on a screen in Marvel's Most Wanted, who on earth would leave that on their screen to watch it? You look at it and think you're watching the circus. Absolutely ridiculous. So instead, you lose the costume. You make Bobby Morse a lot more human. You give her failings. You put in this love interest, will they, won't they? You make it gritty. You give it the ABC Shield treatment. And then all of a sudden you've got something which would have or should have been a good show. And it's writing the story despite its failings to make people buy into it, rather than the story itself doing it. Because I don't think the stories can carry on TV on their own. You need to create something to keep people coming back. Whether they say, "Oh, the effects are amazing," you don't really hear people saying the storyline is amazing. The main story of Flash is rubbish. At the end of the day, we've watched him face off against a big walking, talking shark. It's nonsense. The storyline on its own.
Screw you. Great episode.
We've seen him do some ridiculous things. The storyline isn't good, but everything joined together makes the storyline work despite its failings. And that's the compensations they need to make on the small screen, which is why it lends itself more to the big screen, where you don't have to worry about that, because you've got 2.5 hours for people to sit back in their comfortable chair with their ridiculous amount of Coke and their massive popcorn and just chill out and become part of the story.
Like, there's another great thing here, and I don't know if either of you two saw it recently. It was from the end of August 29th. The NBC, when The Walking Dead was being shipped around, this was before AMC picked it up, NBC wanted to make The Walking Dead a zombie procedural, which they turned it into a cop show, basically, where they would solve zombie cases of the week. It is what NBC would have done with The Walking Dead. Now, I don't know about you, but that would be utter shite.
And it wouldn't have got the viewers that
No.
Walking Dead has become a phenomenon, really. Whether that deserves to be a phenomenon or not is a different discussion, but I think the thing is, this person is talking about what TV used to be, and whilst there are still things like that, what he's doesn't seem to be talking about is what TV is becoming. It says the last half of his quote is, TV is about real people and faces, and not so much about magic and the supernatural things. And I don't know how you can say that when the two of the biggest shows on television are
The Walking
Dead about something supernatural, and Game of Thrones. These are the shows that are making all the money, getting all the viewers. It's a bizarre thing to say, and what I think because he's from that network environment, he's probably thinking this environment isn't for what. It isn't the best place to tell my story.
Well, it is, because he's made a Gotham procedural.
Exactly.
Which is terrible.
And he goes on to talk about how basically this story he's telling is about getting to the point where Batman needs to come and step in. And by doing that, every year things get worse in Gotham, and he's going to escalate and escalate and escalate.
What's happening to our city?
More and more horrendous and make less and less and less sense. And it's like, well, that's just bullshit. Like that. When do you hit the sort of point of diminishing returns? I hate story topping all the time. Like, just tell a good story. Don't worry about topping yourself with the new big villain and the new big threat.
You have to in the network environment. Otherwise, you go the same. You go the same way as Agent Carter, and you just get canned.
But that's why I buy out. I'm like, no, I've not been watching Flash. I've not been watching Arrow. It gets ridiculous. All these nuclear threats and all this bullshit. It's like, I can't do this. Just tell me a human story. Daredevil is not about saving the world. It's about saving his small part of New York from this fucking bad guy. It's so self-contained.
That's basically what he's saying. TV is for the human, the people telling the story. You look at Jessica Jones. That's not about her super jumping up onto the roof. That's about her dealing with her own personal demons.
Yeah.
Matt Murdock is fighting just as much in the court as he is on the streets, and he's telling the.
But he's being dismissive of magic and supernatural things for out of hand when all they are is part of the context of that personal story. Like the shows that do it well, that's just sort of set dressing. That's just this. It's part of the environment that they live in, but it's about people doing.
He's very much part of the old guard of TV.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It's very much. When it seems weird, but like, hopefully, when our generation is in charge of TV would be very different from what it is now. And I'm hoping, but then again, Hollywood has a way of sticking, and TV have a way of sticking to what they hold and known true, and fuck everyone over. But it's that type of TV show, and there's a reason why I'm very anti-Gotham right now. It's because I've watched all of Gotham season 2 in about 2 days, maybe 3. And just the way it's done doesn't like you say, you can pick up a comic like I did this week with Spider-Man. I picked it up, didn't really know what's going on with the whole Miles Teller stuff, but I knew roughly what's going on in the bigger picture of things, which is fine, which is what procedural works as. But when you do Gotham, where you're trying to set up Court of Owls while you have Firefly fighting Catwoman, and there's Hugo Strange under Arkham, and Fish Mooney's back with mind control powers, and this is all within 2 episodes.
It's just
right?
absurd. It is so fucking absurd.
You're binge watching a procedural,
and it's killing me. It killed me.
It's like if you were to watch The Bill on
I could do
all
that.
day, every day, or CSI.
EastEnders Omnibus.
Yeah, it's not designed for it. You need to, if you're gonna binge watching works well with serials That's what it's designed for, because a serial is just long form story told over a series of short clips, whereas procedural, each one is its own story.
I
And
think I think he's
capes and
even
masks don't work in procedurals. They
They're
don't,
not.
because you can't get invested in the characters, which is why Gotham has been forced to focus on the human aspect, and it's obviously why it's basically Batman the Younger. The story doesn't have any true heroes in it. It's got cops doing cop stuff, and because that's the only story they can tell. I think conversely, though, another side of the coin which we're not really thinking about is the different tastes. We're three Brits watching
Yeah.
American TV programs. If you're looking at the Nielsen ratings on these shows, and I used to keep in touch with them a while ago, but it's the whimsical tastes of the American people on the whole, the Nielsen families on the whole, is quite interesting, and it needs to be a blockbuster to keep people engaged.
Right.
And time slot is so important, and we've not really got that many channels to worry about over here. So if we've got something on Sky Atlantic, Sky aren't going to conflict it with Sky One. And BBC and ITV get into their little battles, but usually they just give over and offset each other by an hour.
Yeah.
And whereas in the States they are fighting against each other, which is why when Agent Carter decided to go down a more novel route for the show and make it about just the long form story, people got really bored, and ABC went, well, we can't keep this on, we're not selling advertising space. And that is all it comes down to. It's not quality of story at all. You could have a director of a network sitting watching something, loving a show, but at the end of the day, if it's not selling advertising space, they're not going to keep it on. And because of the whimsical families watching it and giving bad ratings back, it's just not going. The sort of stuff that we want to watch isn't going to make it onto the screens for long. It needs to be bombastic. It needs to be exciting. Keep people engaged.
So
Every year we watch Game of Thrones and people go on a rant for the first 5 episodes as to how slow it is. Every single year that happens. Game of Thrones is always slow for the first 5 episodes. Nothing happens until episode 6 usually.
Well, that's
but everyone remembers the end.
It's
give
probably
you
harder.
that.
It's harder for audiences with Thronies because it comes out once a week. Like no one really moans about the Netflix show that started slow, because you just binge watch it and
put it on,
It
and then
doesn't
you
feel
watch-
slow anymore. It feels just like one continuous story that you can stop when you like.
You stop it when you're knackered after the first fight because you've been sitting at the edge of your seat and you go, that's enough for today.
Yeah.
And
Or you do what I do and then just power through Jessica Jones and Daredevil season 2, just like, I don't care what time it is, let's keep going, it's great.
Jessica Jones in a day as well. That was that was
that-
fun.
I mean, from what I can gather, with this person's quote, Bruno Heller, we partly agree that superheroes are not necessarily ideal for network television, weekly procedural type shows, but when you look at the new model that's emerged, like really, it's becoming a powerhouse.
Well, yeah, the CW's online thing did Vixen, and not many people talk about that, but that's still one of the coolest things. It was an animated Vixen series, and that was really cool. And that had the Flash and Arrow in it.
Well, I think TV is becoming a completely different environment, and this new one is a lot more suited to these sorts of stories. But dismissing television not being okay for magic and supernatural, it's kind of bullshit and it's small-minded. Television can be for any type of story as long as it's told well and is told in an appropriate way for its distribution model. It does not matter about the sort of elements that you decide to play with. You just got to tell a good story that can work either on a weekly basis or in a binge basis if you're going down that road. So, anyway, is there any other thoughts you guys want to express regarding TV stuff?
I'm going to throw out a bold prediction of Gotham Season 3, which is the first half of the season is going to be Court of Owls, done dreadfully. And then the second half is going to be about the Joker legacy. Just putting it out there.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that in another fucking year or so.
I'm going to say this because as much as I hate Gotham, like, watching how much of a shit show it is trying to get everyone into the places they need to be for their villains. It's quite fun. Like,
I think binge watching Gotham is a bit like punching yourself in the bollocks over and over and over again for 22 hours.
at least their version of the Joker or Joker mythos or whatever they're doing with it was better than Jared Leto.
Well,
But that's cool, actually. I like that.
I've not watched Gotham since probably like January time. I will catch up with it before the new season starts. So I suppose I better get on with that. And I don't want to do a binge watch on it.
Don't do it.
Quite enjoying it. I was quite enjoying it. It's
I think I enjoy it on some sort of sick level. It's not a good show.
sick level.
It's not. It's like I just
like the feeling when you pick a scab.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
The Riddler's cool though. That's a little change.
We'll wrap up then, so we can all get on with other things. So that's everything you get in today. Thanks for listening or watching, and if you enjoy this show, make sure you show us with thumbs on YouTube or a rating on whatever podcast service that you use. If you want to message us directly, you can find Alex on Twitter at TellyAlex, Scott is at ScottSedman94, and I'm at IamKirkman. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Pleasure as always.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Play Marvel Legendary.